Hello, and welcome to Saving Grace Education. In this grade 8 history lesson, we'll be looking at a summary of what we have learned in Term 3 about the Scramble for Africa. The colonization of Africa was part of a global European practice which reached all the continents of the world and changed the world radically. In 1884, a group of European leaders and diplomats met in Berlin to cut up Africa in service of their colonial interests. Great Britain was entering the height of its colonial power at that time. The French Third Republic and Otto von Bismarck of Germany were each constructing their own new empires. What followed the Berlin Conference is known as the Scramble for Africa. Let's have a look at Africa before European colonization. In 1870, only 10% of Africa was under formal European control. National borders were not a concern. There was flexibility in terms of movement, governance, and daily lifestyles. There were established forms of government, ranging from powerful empires to decentralized groups of pastoralists and hunters. Societies were led by a state or governed by kingdoms. Communalism was traditional. Land was owned universally and could not be bought or sold. In stateless societies, chiefs managed the daily events of the people. Iron tools improved weaponry for plowing fields, clearing dense forests, and used for making everyday life more convenient. The oral tradition of storytelling was favored. Have a look at a map of Africa in the 1800s. This is what Africa looked like before the 19th century colonization. In this respect, Ethiopia stands out as a defiant thorn in the side of European imperialism and has never been colonized. Now look at a map of Africa in 1913. This is after colonization. Note the position of Britain and France and their control of Africa. Let's have a closer look at the Berlin Conference of 1884. European interest in Africa began when major social problems developed in Europe: unemployment, poverty, homelessness, and social shifts. Europe saw the colonization of Africa as an opportunity to acquire viable resources, prestige, and wealth, including gold, diamonds, copper, cotton, cocoa, tea, cayenne, palm oil, and people, so they could become more powerful. The control of the Suez Canal was also important for countries wanting to trade with India and China. In 1884, Portugal suggested a conference in which 14 European countries would meet in Berlin regarding the division of Africa. German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck called together the major Western powers of the world to negotiate questions. France, Germany, Great Britain, and Portugal were the major players in the conference, controlling most of colonial Africa. The initial brief was to agree that the Congo River, the Niger River mouths, and basins would be considered neutral and open to trade. The conference lasted for 3 months and resulted in a mixture of boundaries that divided Africa into 50 irregular countries. Have a look at the video link below to learn more about this subject. The reasons for African colonization were mainly economic, political, and religious. During the time of colonization, an economic depression was occurring in Europe. Africa was seen as a place that had an abundance of raw materials from which Europe could profit. Labor was cheap. Products like oil, ivory, rubber, palm oil, wood, cotton, and gum could be acquired. There was European rivalry to acquire more territory on the African continent. Morals and principles, as formulated by Christianity and informed by commerce and civilization, was introduced to Africa at this time. Patterns of colonization. By 1900, Africa had been colonized by mainly Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, and Italy. Approximately 97% of Africa was colonized by 1913. Ethiopia and Liberia remained independent. Colonial states were controlling with government systems. The French directed their attention to the active economies of the Niger Delta, the Lagos hinterland, and the Gold Coast. Countries colonized in Africa. By 1900, a significant part of Africa had been colonized by 7 main European powers, including Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, and Italy. Have a look at the countries under each of those countries' control. See how many countries Britain colonized, and compare these to the countries colonized by France, Germany, and Portugal. You might notice that Britain colonized a large area of territory in Africa, including South Africa. Here's a map of Africa showing different colonies in Africa by 1913. When studying this map, pay attention to which country colonized which African country. You can do this with the help of the key on the left-hand side corner of the map. Also have a look at the languages introduced to Africa during colonization. You'll notice that the language of the colonizing country is usually enforced in the colonies. Now let's have a look at how European powers colonized Africa. There was rivalry among African leaders. There were natural disasters, food shortages due to a drought in 1895. Crops produced were destroyed by a plague of locusts. There was a cattle plague during the 1890s, which killed cattle, sheep, and goats. Animals and people died, and those that survived were too weak mentally and physically to fight against European powers. Africans were at a military disadvantage. European powers used forced violence using powerful new weapons. There was an outbreak of new diseases during the late 1890s. And indigenous Africans had no immunity to these diseases, resulting in a large number of the population dying. Results of colonization. Kingdoms of power were stripped. Borders were established. Different groups of people were forced to coexist under one colonial power, which forced a natural division of people and land. African ideologies, patterns of cultural development, and ways of life were impacted by the change in political structure. All political decisions were made by the small political elite with no or little input from the African population. Most formal schooling was a result of the work of missionaries, and most African children did not go to school during the colonial era. Colonial governments were not able to provide basic infrastructure, such as roads and communication networks, nor were they able to provide basic social services, such as education, healthcare, and housing. Urbanization developed, and urban living resulted in changes in economic activities and occupation. The religious beliefs of Africans were adapted or changed. And not much attention was given to promoting social change or development, and the African family structure had been severely changed. Please click on the video link given at the bottom of the slide to see more about this subject. Let's have a closer look at the Ashanti Kingdom and its history. In the 1670s, a military leader named Osai Tutu founded the kingdom and united all of the Akan clans in the area. This kingdom reigned over a large part of present-day Ghana, all the way down to the Ivory Coast, for over 300 years. The rule of law in the Ashanti Kingdom was based on religious rules and viewed crime as a sin. The Ashanti people believed that a golden stool descended from the sky and landed in the lap of the first Ashanti king. Ever since, the stool has been held in high regard. The stool is believed to house the spirit of the Ashanti nation and is still used today in ceremonies. At the end of the 11th century, some entire states and influential individuals in others were Muslim. The Ashanti monarchy still continues in a much smaller form inside Ghana. The Ashanti would drum messages across hundreds of miles through the villages. The messages sent by the drums broadcasted announcements, warned of potential danger, and were used to call meetings. The kingdom was full of gold mines, and leaders made a good profit from it by selling to Europeans over the years. The kingdom also profited from the ivory trade. And the Ashanti is still the largest tribe in Ghana today. The Ashanti Empire was one of a series of kingdoms along the coast, including Dahomey, Benin, and Oyo. All of these states were based on trade, especially with gold, ivory, and slaves, which were sold to first Portuguese and later Dutch and British traders. The Gold Coast began encountering European traders in the mid-1400s. This led to a trade in ivory, slaves, and other goods which gave rise to kingdoms such as the Ashanti. By the 17th century, many European trading giants, including the British, Dutch, and French, began building fortifications along the coastline in order to assert their positions. The British fought a total of 4 wars against the Ashanti Kingdom over a period of almost a century, before finally incorporating it into the Gold Coast colony. The British, Dutch, and French all set up shop in the Ashanti Kingdom and built several forts along the coast. At the end of the last Ashanti War, the territory of the Ashanti people became a British colony. And this happened on the 1st of January 1902. In 1956, British Togoland, the Ashanti Protectorate, and the Fante Protectorate were merged with the Gold Coast to create one colony, which became known as the Gold Coast. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this lesson.